with Her Bare Hands by J. Wilburn. Sandy didn't wake up until the police were already there. By then, she was being whisked away. I'm not sure if that's the right whisk, but I'll check it later. Being whisked away, and they spent an almost sleepless night with their aunt on the other side of town. Sandy was still foggy from being awakened in the middle of the night among all those flashing lights. She only saw her mother for a moment, and it was hard to tell in strobing red and blue light, but Sandy thought she saw blood on her mother. Mom said everything was fine, but she was crying when she said it. The police hustled the kids out of the house and wouldn't let them turn around to see the kitchen where most of the uniformed officers were gathered and where the white flashes of old-fashioned cameras popped and washed out the colors around them. Why don't they use their phones, Sandy wondered. Sandy and Kyle's aunt said everything was fine too, but that's the sort of thing adults said to children when everything was far from okay. Kyle claimed claimed to have been awake the whole time, even before the police came. She didn't believe everything her older brother told her. She'd be a fool if she did. Sometimes she had no choice. That night was one of those times because Kyle was the only one willing to say what happened. A man broke into our house, he said, in a hushed tone, so their aunt wouldn't hear. Those words struck fear into Sandy. Someone breaking into their house was one of her deepest fears. It gave her many sleepless nights. Sometimes she only slept well when it rained. She thought no one would be out breaking into houses when it rained. The joke was on her because she had slept soundly through the whole thing on account of the pouring rain when she fell asleep. It had stopped some time before the police arrived. Okay. Make that clear. I may never sleep again, she thought. Kyle pulled her out of her troubled thoughts. I already said thoughts. Let's say musings. Probably a little too fancy by half, but I'm going to do it anyway just so it's a different word. Out of her troubled musings with the next bit. It was someone she knew. Who? Sandy asked a little too loud. Kyle shushed her, listened for their aunt, and after hearing nothing, he said, I don't know, it was a man, not Dad, though. Why would it be Dad? She wondered, but didn't ask. Kyle said she fought him off with her bare hands. Sandy wanted that bit explained, but their aunt... Okay, I need her lowercase. Their aunt came in and checked on them. She sat between the kids and rubbed their backs as she whispered that everything would be fine. Kyle must have believed her because he fell asleep as Sandy lay awake for hours thinking about her mother's bare hands. The events of that night grew into something much, much bigger in Sandy's imagination. The next day, they returned home with Mom. The whole drive, Sandy kept staring at her mom's hands. Their aunt had begged for Mom to just let her keep the kids a while longer, or to let her drive them back home. But Mom insisted on picking them up herself, and that detail would haunt Sandy later as she pieced together the night. That's a good long sentence, but I think it works. All right. Their mother had bruises under her eyes, and she moved with stiff joints. Lots of people stopped by and spoke with her in conspiratorial whispers, kids not included kind of whispers. Dad called at one point to check on things, and that was odd because Dad never called to check on things. As expected, it turned into Mom shouting. She said things like, "You can't be serious," and "I can't believe you blame me for this." That phone call was interrupted by another visitor, and Mom returned to quiet tones as soon as she hung up. All right, maybe spending a little too much time on this opening section, but we'll move right along here. Mom being distracted gave Sandy time to inspect the house and piece together what really happened that night, all the stuff adults leave out. The house had been cleaned, but it was a quick job. They only had one night and one morning to do it, so clues were left behind. Sandy collected all these details and stored them away. These were the pieces her imagination latched onto and used to build and embellish the story of that night for months and years to come. All right. The front door would eventually be replaced. Their blue door became an ordinary brown one that Sandy never really, let's say an ordinary brown-gray one that Sandy never really liked. Before that, there were deep cracks above and below the doorknob. Someone had drilled in big fat screws to hold it together until the new door was installed. The deadbolt wasn't broken, so Sandy thought maybe they forgot to lock it. In her mind, the man, someone twice as tall and twice as ugly as any ordinary human man, had kicked his way inside. He wore big black boots that left a little rubbery streak. Let me fix that spelling real quick. That's what editing is for. Little rubbery streak on the outside of the door. Of course, he had a scraggly black beard, like a pirate or a crazy mountain man. Sandy never saw a picture of the actual man, but this is the one she painted for herself. All right, let me add in here. His teeth were filed to sharpened points. Not neat vampire fangs, but the razor teeth of some more base monster. All right. Mom was in the living room. Okay, Mom was in the living room watching TV. Let's say she. All right, Mom was all they had, so she had to work all day and still be a mom in the evening. She was tired all the time, even on the weekends. Sometimes she fell asleep while watching TV, but this night Sandy pictured her mother as being wide awake and springing to action when the bad man kicked his way inside. Mom stayed up watching TV even when she was tired and the kids were in bed. It was the one time she got to herself. Everything in the living room had been cleaned up, but a folded paper napkin had fallen to the floor at the edge of the couch's ruffle and had been missed in the cleanup. All right. Is cleanup one word? Yep. All right. Sandy saw her mother rising so fast from the couch that she scattered whatever snack she had been eating, not heating. It wasn't popcorn or candy, no folded napkin for that. Mom must have been eating a sandwich. Sandy pictured it as half finished. Sometimes Sometimes there were chips on the plate as she played through the events of that night in her imagination. Sometimes there were no chips. That detail wasn't important. Mom still had on her jeans and a faded college sweatshirt from a school she didn't finish learning at. It was her comfortable finish learning at because Kyle had been born. Okay. It was her comfortable after work clothes. It was what she wore when the kids were taken away by their aunt. She never wore it again because they were stained with blood after that night. All right. The bad man was someone Mom knew. Kyle had said so. Her brother lied regularly. But this was the sort of detail that was too specific to be too specific and too odd to be made up. So Sandy had to figure that out. This was a monster that had hunted Mom her entire life. Maybe since she was a little girl. All right. Hold on. Let me take care of a bot here real quick. We'll block him and then refresh the page. And he is gone. Okay, so everybody say goodbye to the bot. Only a billion more to go. All right, so the monster of a man had been turned. No. Okay, so Sandy had to figure that out. This was a monster that had hunted Mom her entire life, maybe since she was a little girl. She thought she had gotten away from him, but he had found her again. Now Mom had to fight the bad man monster again. Alright, that sounds good to me. Mom ran at the man instead of away. The kids were asleep upstairs and the stairs were close to the front door. So the monster of a man had turned toward the stairs and Mom charged. Alright, let me get that back. He was tricking her, though. Sandy knew bad men were tricky. That's why everyone warned you never to go anywhere with strangers, no matter how tricky they tried to be. As Mom, I need to capitalize this. Alright, because we're using it in place of her name. As Mom got close, he swung a fist as big as his black boot and knocked her against the wall by the front door, where a couple of the frames on the wall slightly tilted the day they all came home. Let's say were slightly tilted. Usually don't edit in wers and wases. You try to get them out, but I'm going to put it in there for clarity. A little blood came from Mom's nose and got on her favorite sweatshirt. The bad man grabbed her by the throat because that's what bad men do. He lifted her off the ground and laughed in her face because that's what terrible men did in the movies. In the movies Sandy wasn't supposed to watch, but Kyle sometimes told her about. All right, looking good. He went on laughing and carried her into the kitchen. Sandy wasn't sure why, but she had a sense that he planned to do something bad to Mom, and if she didn't stop him, he would go after Sandy and her brother next. Sandy moved the fight into the kitchen in her version of the story because that was where the other clues were. The bad man missed that Mom's hands were changing. Hair sprouted from her fingers, and the back of her hand, from her fingers, the back of her hands, comma, and around her wrists. Sometimes Sandy thought part of her mom's forearms started to grow fur too. Once he had her in the kitchen, he brought her close to his face to whisper terrible things he planned to do to her. Sandy made it whispers so she wouldn't have to hear what it was. He then hit Mom in the face at least twice, but sometimes Sandy made it more because Mom needed time. Let me change the tense here. Needed time to finish her transformation. As her furry hands grew in size, dark black claws emerged. Say emerged. Would sprouted be better? I'm going to use sprouted. Sprouted from Mom's bare hands. He pulled her close one more time and started to say what he was going to do to the kids once he was done with her. That's when she growled with a voice that went with her new paws. Alright, I got the wrong kind of new. Homophone typos bother me the most because I feel like they make me look dumber. Now his face went from joyful evil to real terror. Mom clawed at his cheeks, shaving off his beard and turning his face to bloody ribbons on both sides. He cried out in a high girlish voice that embarrassed him. Sometimes he still held her in the air for a moment longer as his blood got on Mom's sweatshirt and jeans, ruining them. Either way, she clawed through his sleeves and tore away parts of the bad man's muscles into useless flaps of flesh. By now, he dropped her to her feet, and he cried louder and harder than Sandy ever had. He saw her bare hands all furry and deadly. Let's say Mom's. He saw Mom's bare hands all furry and deadly. At that point, he peed himself, turning the front of his dirty pants into a big, dark, wet stain. Sometimes he pooped himself, too. In every rerun of the story in Sandy's head, he turned to run out the broken front door, but Mom grabbed him and dragged him back into the kitchen with her. Mom wasn't mean, let's say most of the time. Mom wasn't mean most of the time, and even with her magic bare hands, she did not like to hurt people, but if she let this bad man go, he would hurt other moms and children again. Not all moms had bare hands. Sandy's mom could not let him go. This had to be finished tonight, no matter how big of a mess it might make. He tried to bite and kick to get away from her, but she lifted him up and slammed him down on the sink, breaking all the dishes Sandy and Kyle had helped Mom to wash and set up in the drying rack. Sandy knew this part because someone... Sorry, let me fix the typos. That's what editing is for. But someone had missed a few broken pieces of plate. One jagged bit was under the edge of the cabinets near the baseboard. A few more crumbs of broken plate had remained in the sink. They ate on paper plates for a couple days, and then mostly on new plastic plates after that, unless they needed to heat something up in the microwave. The bad man had climbed out of the sink and spilled the broken plates everywhere. He was scared, but he was mad now too. Bad men don't like to lose. They don't think women and girls should win ever. They get embarrassed when a girl shows them up. When bad men are embarrassed by girls, they try to hurt them. So the bad man attacked Mom again, and it was the biggest mistake of his life. He tried to swing his bad man fists for bad man punches. Mom used her bare hands to maul him. He sure did wish he could get away then, but it was too late for him. He had earned all the pain and suffering he had coming. Mom threw him into the refrigerator, but not hard enough to break it. The magnets were all moved around, so Sandy figured out that they had been knocked onto the floor when the bad man slammed into the door. Whoever cleaned up did not know where they went. Did not know where, let's say, they were supposed to go. Where they were supposed to go. Did not know where, let's say the magnets. Did not know where the magnets were supposed to go. So they just put them all back in a hurry. Some of them were even upside down until Mom finally fixed them a few days later. Either the bad man tried to step away from the refrigerator or Mom lifted him away with her bare hands. Because there, wrong kind of there. Again, another homophone typo to fix. Gotta always fix those. Because there were spots of blood along the edge of the kitchen floor toward the dining room. Sandy had stared at those tiny bright red spots for a long time that day. She had debated whether those were spots of Mom's blood or of the man who broke into the house the night before. The floor was mopped, but was streaked with curved lines of grime, meaning someone besides Mom had mopped up. The only reason they, sorry, I'm editing, so I'm trying to fix all the typos I have here from the first draft. Excuse me just a second. The only reason they would have mopped in the middle of the night after all this was because there was a lot more blood on the floor. Those tiny spots had just been missed. If there was a lot of blood on the floor, it must have been from the bad man because Mom was alive and the bad man was gone. Kyle cleaned the floor later. He sprayed and wiped up the spots of blood before Mom could see them. He told Sandy that was why he did it. He didn't want Mom to see it. Sandy couldn't make sense of that because obviously Mom had seen it when she was beating the bad man with her bare hands the way Kyle had told her. He even tried to re-mop the floor because Mom's back was so stiff from the fight. He just made more streaks, different streaks. After a few days, Mom felt some better and mopped the floor a third time herself, and then it was right. That night of the break-in. All right. Again, I don't want to confuse, when I use she, I don't want to confuse when I'm talking about the mom or when I'm talking about Sandy, who's making up the story. That night of the break-in, Mom had torn through the bad man's shirt. As he begged her to stop and promised not to hurt anyone ever again, Mom's claws ripped through and into his chest and belly. He choked on his own blood and screamed at her, why, over and over again. Tiny dots of blood flew from his lips and spotted the floor where the first man to mop had missed them. Mom growled down at him, because you are a liar, bad man. He tried to shuffle away, but only spread more of his blood to be mopped up later. He was confused and moved toward the dining room instead of the front door. It didn't matter, though, because Mom was far from finished with him. He made it as far as the edge of the floor where the tiles in the kitchen met the fake wood floors of the dining room. That's where a small curve of dark stain remained forever at the ends of those wood pieces. Let's say fake. Those fake wood pieces. Mom finished him off there. She ripped out his heart, she tore open his lungs so he couldn't scream anymore and wake up Sandy before the police arrived. She ripped into his stomach like a plastic bag. Sandy always pictured a whole cheeseburger and fries spilling out. Let me change the tense here, sorry. Spilling out. Bad men never ate healthy. Even after he fell still and silent, ruining the wood floor Mom couldn't afford to replace, she shredded him like barbecue with her sharp black claws at the end of her bare hands. When the police finally arrived and all the messy work was already done, Mom changed her hands back to her human form. Sandy imagined the police would have more questions for a woman who could turn partway into a bear. Mom didn't get in trouble because of all the blood. It was a bad man after all, and bad men were the policeman's job. After the kids were gone, the imperfect cleanup job had to begin. Since the police weren't there to stop the bad men themselves, they felt bad and helped clean up. The body was something Sandy could never figure out. After finding, um, I think I mean to say those. Let me try that sentence again. After finding those bright dots of missed blood, she had looked for more blood between the kitchen and the front door. If they missed blood in the kitchen, they must have missed some while carrying the body out. Sandy even checked the windows to see if they tossed the bad man's body out that way, but no blood dots were missed there or anywhere else. Sometimes she could convince herself they just cleaned up the rest. Sometimes she could believe that they had a big bag. They had a big... No, here we are. I'm sorry. A bag that was big enough. Okay, let me try that sentence again. Sometimes she could believe they had a bag that was big enough to hold the bad man and drip no blood on the way out. But sometimes, when Sandy replayed the events of that night as she constructed them in her imagination, the night ended with everything cleaned up except for the body. The police promised to come back for it, but they forgot. But they must have forgotten. All right, that's good. As Sandy and Kyle's aunt got them ready to bring home, Mom had called and said she would drive to get them. Her aunt had begged Mom to let her bring them home. Mom had been through a lot, but Mom insisted. The only thing Sandy could figure was Mom wanted to clean up more. If Mom had cleaned up, the floor would have been mopped properly. The pictures would be straightened. The magnets would have been right, and all the pieces of broken plate would have been gone. So what was Mom doing? Sandy often ended her imagined story before the last cleanup, but sometimes she pictured her mom turning completely into a bear to finish off the rest of the body the police had forgotten. Mom didn't have time to clean up all the stuff the police had missed, but she needed to get rid of the rest of the bad men before Sandy and Kyle got home. All right, let me fix that. So Sandy pictured a big furry brown bear eating up the bad man, including all his meat, bones, and hair. Only a few drops of blood were missed as Mom's bare tongue licked up the rest. That day and for a number of days after, people stopped by to whisper talk with Mom. Sandy caught some of it as she went over the evidence again and again to understand what happened. The visitors whispered compliments about how amazing, incredible, and strong Mom was. Sandy knew all this. She wondered how many of them knew about Mom's bare hands. Sandy was still scared to go to sleep at night for a long time, but what... Hey, man, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Good to see you. But whenever she lay awake for too long, she thought about Mom's bare hands, and she fell asleep feeling safe. All right, I want to add one little piece in here. Good grief, how many of those did you do? A lot. That's funny. All right, so Mom held Sandy more often after that night, even though Sandy was getting too big for that. She held Sandy while they watched TV. She hugged Sandy for no reason sometimes. They'd go to the beach, and Mom would hold Sandy's face with both hands and rub noses with her as they laughed surrounded by sunlight. Sandy feared her mother's hands sometimes. She worried if Mom wasn't careful or was distracted, that they might change into claws before Mom noticed. That never happened, though, and Sandy never asked to see them. She took comfort in knowing that Mom would never hurt her and would never allow her. Okay, hold on, let me fix a spelling there real quick, sorry. That Mom would never hurt her and would never allow her to be hurt. Sandy wondered if she would have bare hands and bare courage if she ever needed it one day. Okay, we'll change this last Sandy to she. All right, and I believe that's it.